Okay. I've never known if this infinite regress is just a side effect of it taking a picture of itself, right, when it's doing the screen capture, or if it's a artsy thing that they do. I suspect it's just a side effect, but okay. Are we ready? You guys ready? Sometimes my mindset isn't ready. I'm going to do a new project. And again, it will be a console application. Most of them will be a console application. There will be a couple of times we'll do a WPF and we'll do an ASP.NET one eventually. Yeah.
I can't find Zoom. Zoomable.
What do you want, Zoom? You want it just bigger? So you can reset your resolution, or it's called magnifier. It's not called zoom, but it's called magnifier. The little thing here is magnifier. Once you're inside there, you can reset your fonts to whatever you want. I'm zoomed. I probably will run in Zoom. I actually prefer, although it can make, if you guys don't like it, let me know and I can reset my resolution. One of the things about Visual Studio that you'll discover is that it's very busy and it's nice to have a lot of screen space. If I cramp it up with reducing my resolution, it's just not as fun for me, but I can do that. I'm going to name this number examples. What you name them doesn't matter much, but you should name them something that when you come back to it a week from now, you have some vague idea what it is. What you don't want to do is have console 1, console 2, console 3, console 4, because it'll number them for you. But then a week from now, you go, but which one is my assignment? I don't know. It's 7 of them in console, you know. It's really hard to tell. So it's a good idea. And again, I usually don't change the path. You can if you want to work off the desktop or you want to work off even your thumb drive, although, as I said, eventually the thumb drives usually, there's some things that it won't do on the thumb drive. From executing there, you can copy it and move it from the thumb drive every time. And I'm going to just use the default .NET version, and I'm just going to do OK. Notice there's a little checkbox here I should mention. It says create directory for the solution. Basically what that means is that every time that you run this, it'll create a new folder for it. If you don't want that, if for some reason you want them all in the same folder, which would be a mess because there's going to be lots of them with the same names, I mean, same things, but you can uncheck that and it'll put it all in one folder.
Is it just saving each version?
What?
Is it saving the output or just each version of what you've written?
So all the versions will go into the same folder, okay, unless you rename it. Does that make sense? There is versioning control in here. Again, I'm not, but as you get more sophisticated, that can matter. Visual Studio is tied to GitHub if you want, and you can also tie it to other version control things. Because so is this? I'm just going to real quickly do our comment at the top. And you don't have to use this type of, sometimes I do this, which just gives you the XML comment. Whatever you want to do. But I'm just going to say the other one is fine. This program shows examples of integers. Oops, you have to do the 3 again. And doubles, not drubbles. And we're going to do some math operators. Some of you have already started this, I know. Some of you have finished it. So today is the 5th, 6th. Okay. 2016 always seems like a science fiction date to me, but that's just because I'm old, I think. We were supposed to have Martian colonies and flying cars.
I have a complete program.
What did you do?
Chris.
Is that the one you did before? So it's not a not an actual complete program. It's gonna run and the project. Make sure you choose console application. One of the reasons why we don't use some of the other templates is that they have tons of other code, right? That basically you just fit your code into, and I think that's really confusing when you first start out. That you're better there. Let me, by the way, let me show you how to change your font, because you said it was way too small, and it is initially too small. If you go to Tools and you go to Options and you go to Fonts and Colors, you can change your font size. I'm going to change mine to like 24. I don't suggest you go that big. We got line numbers, right? We got everything. So I'm going to do OK. And then I'm actually going to unzoom and see if I can do, because that'll give me a lot of room. Is that code big enough? Particularly from the far back, is it big enough? That is the code big enough? Okay. And then when I want to show you something over here, I'll just zoom for those. This way I can kind of. All right, so inside of here, and again, we'll move out of main in a week or two, but for a while we'll stick inside of it. Do you guys have any questions? And again, if you want, it's not a terrible habit to comment, you know, just to keep your curly braces a little bit straight. You don't have to do that. So what I want to do is I want to talk about numbers. And basically, as I said, two kinds of numbers, integers and doubles. So last time we declared a variable like string name, right? So this is the type, string, and this is the variable name, which in this case is name. If you want to declare an integer, you can do the same thing. I'm just going to call it int number. Okay. Int is int. Real quickly, a little bit of high school algebra. What is an integer? What makes it an integer?
A whole number.
Yeah, and what else about it? No decimal parts, right? It's a whole number without decimal parts. That has some implications, like when you do division. If your answer has decimals, it will just drop them. Right, so when, like in the assignment, there's a thing that deals with money and tips. A lot of that has to do with decimal parts, and again, integer won't work for that. But integer is just a whole number with no decimal parts. So if we have a number, I'll make another one, int number 2. I just declared them. Guys, remember what the green is under here?
Hasn't been used.
It hasn't been used. It's just informational. Just like your comments. And as I said, you can change all the colors if you want, but they're kind of coordinated. So if you change all your colors, you should think it through before you do it. All right, so let's just do some really simple math. I'm declaring all my variables up here. Int answer. Okay, so we have three things. And I'll just show you a couple of the, so let's say that answer equals, what do we want to do? Number one?
Just number one.
Yeah, we could do a plus. I don't want number two. Okay, with no spaces. And then a semicolon, right?
And you don't have a number one.
Oh, it's just number. Yes, thank you. I count on your guys as good eyes. And so I do have a number two, so why is it not liking that? That actually should be fine. Oh,
Oh,
I didn't give them any values. So before you can use them in a math equation like this, they have to have some values. I'll show you how to get values from a user in a minute. So to show this answer, we would have to do console right line. And, you know, at this point, we could either just show answer, or you could do something like, let's do quotes. I'm going to do placeholders. Typing, the hard thing to do. And then I'm going to do what you're going to replace in there. So this would be number. This would be number two. And this will be answer. There's one other thing we have to do in Visual Studio. Anybody know what that is? We need to stop it long enough to see the answer. Remember, I wrote this into the toolbox?
Yeah. Press to continue.
Yeah, so I'm just dragging it over. You can type it in again if you don't have it. But the read key just stops it and waits for a keystroke. So I'll give you a second now. Run that, and then we'll look at a. So instead of assigning them up here, I'll show you how to get them into the thing from the user. That should come to 10, right? Oh, I need to make that bigger. There's a place for a zoom. Did I kill the magnifier? I meant to just minimize it. Questions on that, just in general? Do you guys know what the main operators are? So that's plus. What does multiplication look like?
That's that's the star, it's the
Right, so let's just do the operators. So we got plus, minus looks like that. Asterisk is multiplication. Division. And then, anybody know what that one is? It's a modulus, yeah. Anybody know what a modulus is?
It gives the remainder.
It gives the remainder. When you're thinking of the modulus, think of what for me was third grade math, where you're only dealing with whole numbers. And so when you do a division, rather than going into decimals, you just return the remainder. the percent sign returns the remainder. That's actually useful. You may think it is. Why not just return the decimals? But sometimes you need a whole number and then what's left over. Think about if you're trying to figure out you have X number of people and you have X number of buses. You can't have a fraction of a bus. It's a whole bus or it's no bus. Right? And you can't split a person between two buses. So you need whole numbers there. So there are times when a whole number is really useful for that. There are also times, like if you're testing a value of a number, say you need it to be divisible by a certain thing. So if the modulus is 0, it means that it is divisible by that number, totally without any left over. Does that make sense? There are times when the modulus is useful. That's all I want to say. Let's do a thing with the modulus real quickly. And then I'll show you after that how to enter this. So let's do actually, I'm going to do it after the console write line. I can use the same variables if I want. So like I can reuse answer. What happens if I reuse answer here? Yeah, it just overwrites what this answer was. That's why I wanted to make sure I wrote this one before I do this one. Because if I did the next equation under here, it's whatever the last assignment is what it'll show here. So I'm going to do answer equals, so number is 3. Let's do number 2 divided by number. Okay. And then I'll do, I'm just going to copy, let me undo my zoom. So I'm just going to copy this line down below, but I'm going to change it a little bit. I'm going to do divide. I'm going to change this to number 2 and this to number. Okay, so and then what will be the number here? 7 divided by 3. It'll be just 2, right? So if we run that. And then I have to zoom again. Okay, so I did the sum of 3 plus 7 equals 10. Oh, I forgot to change the word sum. The quotient. But 7 divided by 3 equals 2. Again, that's integer division, right? So what that means is that there's no decimal place. Okay. If we want to see the remainder, we could use the modulus. So I'm going to write underneath here. This is not good program structure, by the way, but we will worry about structure later. Answer equals, and then what? And I'll change this to quotient while I'm here. Remember it. Answer equals number 2 modulus number. And then what we'll do here is we'll change this. Again, I'll just sort of copy that. Let's just. My brain isn't working as well as it could today. So we'll say the modulus, or let's just say the remainder. And if we run that, And let me zoom that. I killed my zoom again. So the modulus is 1. There's one remainder. Okay. So are there any questions on integers?
Can I see
Yeah.
the?
Sure.
Thank you.
And let me unzoom so you can see the whole. I just want to minimize that, not get rid of it. Okay. Oh, you want, what part do you need?
Yeah, different.
Oh, yeah, I was in your way. And this is being videotaped too, yeah.
The declaration of your integers or for strings that matter,
Yeah.
that always has to happen under main.
No, it doesn't actually. When we talk about methods and breaking things out of, so when we start creating main, you can declare methods and I mean declare variables inside of a method like main, or you can declare them at the class level.
Okay.
Yeah. And we'll talk about that because that's important. It has issues of scope, but we're not there yet. So, and again, I could have, well, actually, I probably would want to declare the int numbers up here before I did. You couldn't declare them inside again. You have to declare them before you can use them. Did you have a question? You look like there was a question blooming. Does that make sense, though, sort of? So let's say we want to, instead of just having number and number 2 have a set value, let's say we wanted to get the value from the user. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get rid of the equal up there where I assigned a value to them. Notice that number and number have an error there, and they would have numbers on the way down too, because they're not assigned. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to console write line. I love how it capitalizes my L when I forget. Enter the first number, or enter the first integer since we're doing. Okay. And then I'm going to do number equals console read line. But there's an error there. And there's an error there. Well, I guess I need to zoom if you're going to see the error. If this zooming makes you like seasick, let me know. So if I do this and move. So this tells you what it is. I want to get into the exception. It says you cannot implicitly convert type string to int. Does anybody know why that error is occurring? Yeah, you need to. So everything, this is something that, again, never happens in JavaScript, doesn't happen in Python because they're loosely typed. But this is strictly typed. Everything you type onto the console is a string, even if you type a number, right? As far as it's concerned, it's a string. A string is any list of characters. It could be numbers, it could be whatever, right? So anything you type onto the console is a string. Later, when we do web forms and Windows forms, anything you type into a text box is a string, right? So you have to convert it to the type that you need it to be. The easiest way, and there's a couple of ways you can do this, but the easiest way is to say int parse and then put parentheses around this. All right, so what parse does, you can also do a convert. Convert is another keyword you can use, but parse is what I usually use. this integer, notice that integer is it's a number type, but it has a dot and it has a method, right? Everything in .NET, everything in C# is an object, even numbers. Numbers can have methods, they can have properties. Parse is a property of int. I think I asked this before. I think there's like only one person that had done Java. Java, instead of doing it this way, has a superclass called integer, where you enter the int and have it, the string and have it completed. But this one is built into the actual other type. What parse does, by the way, is it looks at what you type in. And when it does that, it says, is that a legitimate integer, right? Can I convert that to an integer? So it looks at the string and says, is it just numbers with quotes around it, basically? If it is, if it's a legitimate integer, it will parse it and turn it into an integer and assign it to number. Okay? If you type something that's not an integer, like put a decimal point in it, or type a word, like 3, type it as a word, it will fail, it'll crash. Okay. I will show you later. I'm going to go back to the dot real quick just to show you something. You might notice that there's a try parse. Okay. Try parse is actually a better thing to use, but to do it, we'd have to use if statements. So once we've done if statements, I'll show you how to do try parse. Try parse does the same thing as parse does, but it tries it. And if it fails, it doesn't crash your program. It returns a Boolean false. And then you can do with that what you want. Right? You can do it and say, please enter a valid number. You can make them enter a valid number. You can do whatever. But for right now, because we haven't done if statements, we'll just stick with the parse. So just know that this program can crash really easily. So I'm going to do exactly the same thing. So I'm just copying it. And then I'll get out of Zoom here. Oh. I've done that with like a whole program, 500 lines. Suddenly you have it highlighted for some reason. You press enter and it's all gone. Thank God for Control Z, right? Okay, so I'm gonna go find the Zoom, unzoom. Okay. This time instead of enter, we'll just say enter the second. And we'll do number 2. And this time, everything will work the same as it did before, except that the numbers will be whatever the user enters. Does that make sense? So I need to zoom back up. Oh, there it is. Undo, run it. Okay, so the first integer, anybody have a good first integer? 2. Second integer? 6. Okay. And so there's a 0 remainder. But everything worked okay, right? From our entry. I think that's almost all I have to say about ints. We'll look at doubles here in a second. Now, the thing about ints is that they can give you some headaches sometimes when you declare something as an int and then you divide it, and like you're doing a percent. Percents, even if you multiply them by 100 to make them bigger than a number, the actual division returns a decimal. And the decimal will be dropped. So you'll end up with all of your percents are 0. Is typically how that ends up. There is a way, and this is, I guess, how I will. What if I wanted to see not the remainder, but the actual full decimal involved? So I'm going to do one more answer. And we'll just do a division. Now this would return depending on the number, this will only return the whole number. If I wanted to see the actual result, I could do something like this. Anybody have any idea what that's doing?
That's giving it the decimal points.
Yeah, you're casting it to a number. Why is it underlined? No, they're in the right place. I'm trying to think of why.
Should have put parentheses around the quotient.
No. What is it not like? Oh, you know why? My answer is an int. I can't convert a double to an int. I can convert an int to a double, but I can't. So if I did this, this will also work. I'd have to convert both arguments. Anybody know why you can't convert a double to an int? Without, you can do it if you're explicit about it, but you can't implicitly do it. The compiler protects you from losing information, right? If you have a double, it means it has decimal places. And if you convert it to an int, which is what answer was, no, is it not like what answer? It will, you could lose those decimal places. All right, so let's do, instead of answer, let's come up here and do double. And then if I do answer, it will be happy. It didn't like the conversion on both sides of the equal sign. This has to be a double for this to do this. But when I cast one side of this to a double, this is still an integer. But because part of it is a double, it always resolves to the higher precision. The higher precision, the one with the most information, right? So if this side is double, then this side will be treated as a double as well. Does that make sense at all? Casting, basically, for a lot of casting, all you have to do is put the name of what you want to cast it to in parentheses in front of the thing that you're casting. It's a little bit, I'm not expecting you to do a lot of casting, but there are times when you have to. Actually, it happens quite a bit. Let me run. Oh, I need a right liner. We won't ever see that anyway. And then we'll do a little bit with a double. And then we'll be about done with that. I'm going to just say the, what do we want to call it? I'll call it, just say the double quotient. All right, so if I run this, what did I do? That could go away. That's just extra. And let me zoom up. So I want to do a number. So the first number, let's do 3. And then I'm going to do 11. Why is it, so I don't seem to have the correct answer in there. That's not the double quotient. Oh, that's because, well, answer 2, double number 2. That should work. Oh, it's because I said answer. See, that's the trouble with copying and pasting. The answer is the same as the answer up here. It's not the answer here. All right, so if I run it again, I hope you can learn from my mistakes because you'll see lots of them. So let's bring that up. First integer, we'll do the same thing. We'll do 3. And 11. And then we'll see the double. There's some ways you can format this. I'm not sure. Do we want to look at formatting? We could, I guess. I'll do a couple little things on that. And then we'll go on. So if I want to format that number, let me unzoom again. Is this making sense? You guys aren't asking too many questions, is it? What?
Seems like it's working pretty good.
Yeah, this stuff isn't hard. You know what? We're getting just like the bare building blocks. Later, we'll start to build things with them. But in this number, here's a quick way to format. To D2, I have to remember the format. F2. I think that'll work. Anybody have any idea what F2 would be inside that placeholder?
2 decimals.
Yeah, float 2 decimals. Let's see if it works before I say too much about it. I'm going to do the same. So we'll just do the same thing. So 3, 11. Yeah, so it worked. 3.67. Notice it's rounding up. It rounded up before too, actually. Yeah.
Did you declare the answer key to this giving us
So I did declare answer 2. Let me zoom down again so you can see this. As I said, if this starts making you seasick, let me know. Up here at the top, I went up there and I did double answer 2. There's another way you could do this. I'm going to copy exactly the same line. And then, as I said, I might be... The only other thing I want to do is show you how to enter a double. I'm just going to do this. And instead of F2 in here, I'm going to do C. Anybody have any idea what that will be? C is currency. Put the dollar sign on that. It automatically gives you 2 decimal places. A couple of things about these formats. If you're doing math and you're formatting your numbers, you can come up with answers that look wrong, right? Because all of those decimal places are still there. It's not rounding them in fact, it's just rounding them in display. Does that make sense? So when you do the math, all those other decimals are in play. So you could actually look at 2 plus 2 and end up with 5 if there's a lot of decimals that you aren't displaying. That could happen fairly easily. It looks wrong, but it would be correct. That's just a thing to know about formatting is it doesn't affect the underlying number. And I'll show you a way to affect the underlying number in a moment. But just a couple more things. So I want to show you how to enter a double. And I don't know that we'll do a lot with it. The operators are the same for doubles, you know, the plus, minus, asterisk, divide. The only thing is that modulus is fairly meaningless for a double. It really doesn't. I don't think it will. It might even throw an error because it really doesn't mean anything with it when you do have decimal places. So if I were to enter a double, so let's just do another double up here. Let's do lowercase double, number 3. You can tell I'm being very imaginative in my variable names today. And I would probably just say enter a number, but let's say like enter a, this will apply to your assignment. One of them is to calculate a tip. So, and so I have number 3, which I probably should have named something like meal amount, equals, what should I parse? How should I parse it? Or what should I do with it? So we did int parse. What do you think is the equivalent for a double?
Oh, double parse.
Double dot parse. Yeah, it's that easy. But you have to use the type that you have to, this has to match whatever type this is. So this is a double. This has to be double dot parse. And then console read line. Okay. There's others with there's actually a date time parse. There's all sorts of parses you can do. We're just doing a double parse. Does that make sense? If you want an integer, you have to use an int parse. If you want a double, you have to use the double parse. So the type of this has to match the type of this. And again, the math is essentially the same, except that the modulus won't work. And there's one other thing I want to show you. Let's see if I need to do answer 2 equals math. So what if you really wanted to round it? There is a built-in library called math. Let me zoom up. And I just want to tell you that it exists. I don't think you need, oh, come on, where is it? Why isn't that coming up for Zoom? Is it because I have this and I haven't finished it? That's interesting. It won't let me zoom it. I wanted you to see the, oh, there it is. All right, so I'm going to uncomment this. If you do math, all you have to do is type in the word math wherever you want it, and it has all of these functions in it. So math is a library. It's static like main is, in that it's always available, right? It's always loaded, and it's always available. And it will do all these different things, including if you wanted to actually round the number instead of just change the display. So if I did answer, although I wonder if I have to cast it to a decimal. Let's see, answer 2, and how many decimals, and we'll just say 2. Seems to be happy. So if I took the F2 off of here, it should still round it to 2 places. Let me run it and see. And I'll do my same 311. Oh, meal amount. Let's have a good meal. We didn't do anything with the meal amount, but notice that it's still, even though I took the F2 off, because I rounded it, it reduced it to 2 decimals. And it rounded up at the end. There's also like ceiling and floor, etc. Yeah.
What process is going to be more efficient?
It depends on what you want to do. So if if you want your numbers, if you really, really are only going to deal with 2 decimal places, this is better in the sense that the formatting doesn't change the underlying number, so you're still dealing with however long it is. So this actually changes the underlying number, so you have a smaller number to work with, so it's probably more efficient. I think that's all I want to show you for these things, because I think that gives you enough to do the assignments, right? So the main things is to go over it again. So the data types that we didn't ever use the name, but we have string types, which are usually like words, but can also numbers and things if they're not being used mathematically, right? And anything you enter on the console is a string. You have integers, which are whole numbers with no decimal parts. And if you don't need decimal parts, or if you need remainders, that's the thing to use. Doubles are floating numbers. There are lots of floating data types, including decimal, float, I forget some of the others, number, I think there's actually a number type, but double, I think, is a fairly good standard, and it's actually the highest precision. So I would just stick with doubles for the most part. When you get a number, when you want to bring one in from the console or from a text box or a web form, you have to convert what was in the console to that kind of number. So int.parse is the easiest way to do it for an integer, double.parse. As I said, you can also do a convert. There's a convert to int, convert to double. It does exactly the same thing, it's just different syntax. If you want to look that up, you can, but I would generally stick with this, partially because I'm going to go to try parse later. There is a math library. I just want you to know that it exists. And all you have to do ever to get it is to say math dot, and it'll give you all the functions.
Can I see the right side of that last console right line, the second last one? Oh, it's just the same.
Yeah, so what I did, because I rounded it here, I took the F2 off of here.
Oh, so.
Which I maybe should put back in for the, when I post it online, so you know the formatting, or do 3 of them. Or I'll do some kind of comment, so you know that you can do F2 to format it to 2 characters. F is for float, float 2 decimal places. But again, that what you do in here only changes the display, not the underlying number. When you do this, it changes the underlying number. So if you did math after you rounded it, it would only deal with those 2 decimal places. There wouldn't be any other decimals. Are there other questions on these? As I said, this is just the beginning. We're still building basic blocks. We'll start making things more interesting later. Okay. And you guys all kind of turned stuff in the last time, so it's the same. You can copy all the, again, I would do 3 different, I'm going to minus this, and I will post this on the blog in just a minute. So in the assignment, let me zoom this up. Okay. There's basically, just take 2 integers, do the output, the sum, the difference, and the product, and then basically use the modulus. So, and then the third one is starting to be a little bit like a program where you figure out you want to enter a meal amount. You ask the user what tip percentage they want. Later we'll do this where you can do like an if and things and do it a little more sophisticated. And then output the amount. And then I said make tax a constant at a 0.092. That has to be a double, right? Otherwise it'll just be 0. And then output the amount, the tip. And remember, you have to divide. So if you enter the tip as a whole number, you'll have to divide it by 100, right? Because it'll be, percent actually just means that, per 100. What is it per 100? So if you said 15%, that's actually needs to be 0.15. So and you get that if you divide by 100. So anyway, just figure out what the meal is, the tip, and then output the whole. Whether you want to tip on the tax, pre-tax or after tax is entirely up to you. So, questions on that? That tip program, by the way, where I do tips, for some reason, I don't know why, that's the like the first program I write in Android. It's the first program I write in. I mean, it's just my go-to for first programming, just to see how things work. I don't know why. I usually tip 20%, which sometimes makes my wife mad. Because it is not our duty to support every waiter and waitress. But I've known a lot. Actually, my kids are working as waitresses now. So, any questions about that? You have almost an hour. You can work in class here, or you can go to lunch. It's entirely up to you. And I will help if you need. If you stay here and work, I'll help you with it. And whether we move on from this on Monday, it kind of depends on where you guys are with it. I may give you some time to work on it on Monday, but if most people are done, then I may not. So don't count on it, but it's a possibility. Does that make sense?
Is there any way you can put the?
I'm going to put the code on the blog in about 2 seconds, and I will stop the video now so that it's, and I'll post it too.